A merciless night roared, icy wind howling over the stream, where Blaze, once a racing king, trembled, leg broken and blood-soaked, cast aside by the ruthless millionaire, Miles Grayson. The truck's taillights faded, leaving him to a lonely death, until Lila, a shadowy girl, emerged in the dawn, her gaze piercing his agony. Who condemned this horse to darkness, and what will she uncover in the danger lurking ahead? Before continuing the story, tell me which city you're watching from. I want to know how far this video has come. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can send you exciting stories like this every day. Thank you. The night was a beast, black and merciless, its claws tearing through the wilderness as a cold wind shrieked over the stream, slicing the silence with a voice sharp as shattered glass. Blaze stood alone, his once majestic frame a trembling ruin, jet-black coat matted with mud and blood, his left foreleg bent at a sickening angle. Each step was a stab of agony, hooves scraping the earth, leaving crimson streaks that vanished into the icy water, lapping at his fetlocks. His mane, once a banner of glory whipping in the wind, hung limp, a tattered shroud over eyes that gleamed with a fading fire. Eyes that had seen victory, that had burned with pride under the roar of crowds, now dimmed by betrayal's bitter sting. The truck's taillights flickered in the distance, red embers swallowed by the dark, abandoning him to a fate colder than the grave. Miles Grayson's voice still echoed in the void, sharp and unyielding, a blade cutting through the stable stillness hours before. Take him far. I don't care where. Just get him off my land. His gray suit gleamed under the chandelier's glow, his wide-brimmed hat casting a shadow over a face carved from ice. 47 years of wealth and ruthlessness etched into every line. Blaze had been his crown jewel, a thoroughbred whose every race was a testament to Miles's dominion. Golden trophies lining his office like a king's hoard. But that final turn on the damp track had shattered it all. Blaze's leg buckling, his 100-pound body crashing in a cloud of dust. Miles's curse a venomous hiss from the VIP stands. Useless, he'd spat at the vet's grim verdict. Tendon torn, racing days done. To Miles, a horse that couldn't win was a broken tool, discarded without a second thought, his orders delivered with the chill of a man who'd never known mercy. The two workers had obeyed, their faces tight with unease as they hauled Blaze into the truck, avoiding his gaze, those deep, soulful eyes that seemed to plead, to know. One had faltered, a rough hand brushing Blaze's neck, a whispered, "Forgive me, friend," lost to the rumble of the engine. The journey stretched long, silent, the road twisting into a wasteland of barren hills and skeletal trees, until they reached this forsaken stream. They'd unloaded him with care, but it was a hollow gesture, their boots crunching gravel as they climbed back in, ignoring his limping chase, his weak whinny swallowed by the night. Now Blaze stood, a king stripped of his throne, thirst driving him to the water's edge. His reflection stared back, a ghost of the champion he'd been, strength bleeding out with every shuddering breath, the stream's whisper his only companion in a world that had turned its back. Dawn crept in, pale and hesitant, painting the hills in a fragile gold that barely pierced the gloom. Lila stepped from her weathered wooden house, a 19-year-old silhouette against the valley's quiet, her chestnut braids swaying as she moved barefoot down the dusty trail. Her denim dress hung worn and patched, but her eyes shone with a warmth that defied the chill. A resilience carved from a life of hardship and a father's fading voice. Every creature deserves kindness, Lila. Her home was humble, walls peeling, roof sagging, but it pulsed with heart, a sanctuary where Max the donkey and Daisy the mutt thrived on her care. She headed for the creek, Max trudging beside her with empty jugs, Daisy bounding ahead, ears flapping like oversized wings, oblivious to the weight about to crash into their world. The stream glittered under the rising sun, a silver thread slicing through the trees, but something dark moved in its shadows, halting, broken, alive. Lila stopped, breath catching, squinting into the dawn. A deer? No, too tall, too proud, even in ruin. "A horse?" she murmured, voice trembling with awe and dread, her bare feet sinking into the dirt as she edged closer. Blaze's head lifted, a feeble whinny cutting the air, his black coat gleaming despite the filth, his swollen leg a cruel twist of fate. He stumbled back, pain flashing in those deep, haunted eyes that didn't just see her, but pierced through her, heavy with a sorrow that stole her breath. She froze, heart pounding, a pang of anguish twisting her gut. This wasn't just an animal. This was a soul abandoned, a mystery bleeding out before her, and the danger of its unknown past loomed like a storm on the horizon. "Easy, boy," she whispered, hands rising slow and steady, her voice a lifeline in the stillness. Daisy barked, sharp and curious, but Lila hushed her with a flick of her wrist. "Don't scare him." Blaze's nostrils flared, ears twitching, his body swaying as if one wrong move might shatter him. Who had left him here, a king cast into the dirt? Why did his gaze carry such despair, such betrayal? She stepped closer, dust clinging to her feet, her father's words echoing louder now. "Save what's lost, Lila," and a fire sparked in her chest. Whatever this horse had been, whatever had broken him, she wouldn't let him die alone. Not here, not now. Something bigger was stirring, a shadow of greed and a whisper of hope, waiting to collide in the quiet of this forsaken valley. Blaze flinched as she stepped closer, his ears flattening, a weak whinny rattling from his throat. Daisy barked again, her scrappy frame darting forward. But Lila snapped, "Hush, Daisy!" Sharp, urgent, her gaze never leaving the horse. Max stood steady behind her, jugs swaying on his sides, a quiet sentinel in the chaos unfolding by the water. "I'm not gonna hurt you," she murmured, pulling a crust of bread from her bag, her breakfast now a lifeline. She held it out, arms shaking, her voice softening to a lullaby's edge. "You're safe now." Blaze's nostrils flared, hunger warring with fear, his body swaying as if collapse waited just one breath away. Then, surprise, a halting step, another. His muzzle brushed her fingers, rough and warm, snatching the bread with a desperation that stole her breath. "There you go," she said, a smile breaking through her fear, tears pricking her eyes. "You're still in there, aren't you?" Her hands moved slow and sure, brushing his matted mane as she knelt beside him. The leg was worse up close, swollen to twice its size, heat pulsing from the wound, a cruel mark of whatever hell had cast him here. She wasn't a vet, but she'd patched up enough strays to know this was bad, days, maybe hours from death without help. Conflict surged in her gut. She had no money, no medicine, just a patched-up shack and a heart too stubborn to quit. Her father's face flashed, worn, kind, dying in that creaky bed, whispering, "You're stronger than you know, kid." He'd saved a half-dead colt once, nursed it with nothing but grit and love, and she'd watched wide-eyed, learning the cost of compassion. Now that lesson burned in her veins. "I can't leave you," she said, voice cracking, her fingers tracing Blaze's neck. "Not like this." She fashioned a halter from Max's rope, her hands trembling as she looped it over his head, coaxing him from the stream's edge. "Come on, boy," she urged, gentle but firm, her heart pounding as he resisted, his limp a dagger in her chest, his weight sagging against her. Daisy circled, whining. Max plodded ahead, and the trek back to her ranch stretched into an eternity of dust and pain. Blaze stumbled, each step a battle, but his eyes stayed on her, trusting despite the agony, a spark flickering in their depths that she couldn't name. She talked to him, voice steady through her own exhaustion. "You're tough, huh? Been through worse than this, I bet." Her mind raced. Who had he been? Why did he feel so alive, even now, like a king fallen from a throne she couldn't see? The ranch loomed ahead, its weathered walls a beacon of refuge, the stable a humble cave of hay and shadow. Lila guided Blaze inside, Max yielding his spot with a patient snort, Daisy curling nearby as if guarding her new charge. She fetched water, a blanket, her hands moving on instinct, warm cloths from the creek, herbs her grandmother swore by, every touch a prayer against the swelling in his leg. Blaze neighed, soft and strained, but didn't pull away, his muzzle dipping as she worked, as if he knew she was fighting for him. "I'll call you Blaze," she said, sudden, decisive, her father's tales of storm-fast stallions echoing in her mind. "Suits you. Strong even now." She sank beside him, stroking his neck, her voice a whisper. "Whoever left you, they're wrong. You're not done." Then, shock. Blaze's head lifted, slow, deliberate, his eyes catching hers with a clarity that stopped her heart. Not just pain, not just trust, something deeper. A flash of memory of thundering hooves on a track, crowds roaring, a life of glory snuffed out by greed. Lila froze, breath hitching, her hand still on his fur. "You were somebody's, weren't you?" she murmured, awe and dread twisting together. Miles Grayson's face flickered in her mind. Rumors from town, a man who owned half the county, whose horses vanished when they couldn't win. Had he done this? Cast this king into the dirt? Her jaw tightened, anger flaring beneath her fear. "They threw you away," she said, voice hardening. "But I won't." Night fell, the moon spilling silver over the valley, bathing Blaze in a glow that made him look almost whole again. He lay on the hay, exhausted but alive, his breath steadying under her care. Lila sat close, her back against the wall, watching him, her mind a storm of questions. Who was he before this? What had he lost? The weight of his past pressed against her, a shadow she couldn't shake, and with it, a growing certainty. Saving him would cost her more than she knew. Her father's words hummed louder. "Strength isn't free, Lila." And as Blaze's eyes fluttered shut, a fragile peace settling over him, she felt it. The fight was just beginning, and something dark was creeping closer, ready to tear this fragile hope apart. Dawn broke gray and restless, clouds bruising the sky as Lila rose, her denim dress clinging to her sweat-damp skin. She fed Blaze, her hands steady despite the ache, murmuring, "You're tougher than they know, huh?" His ears flicked, a soft nicker answering her, and that spark in his gaze, faint but fierce, stirred her resolve. She'd seen progress, the swelling easing, his steps less tortured, a ghost of strength returning to his frame. But resources dwindled, hay thinning, herbs running low, and the town market's meager earnings wouldn't stretch far with winter looming. Conflict gnawed at her. She'd saved him once, but could she keep him alive? Her father's colt flashed in her mind, its frail body, his calloused hands nursing it through fevered nights, his quiet pride when it stood again. "You're my girl, Lila," he'd said, dying. "You'll carry this." Now she carried Blaze, and the stakes felt higher than she could bear. Hooves thundered in the distance, a rumble that snapped her from her thoughts. She stepped outside, dust swirling as three riders crested the hill, their shadows long and menacing under the overcast sky. Travis led them, Miles Grayson's foreman, his burly frame astride a sleek bay, his cold eyes cutting through the morning haze. Two men flanked him, their faces hard, hands resting on reins with a casual threat. Lila's heart slammed against her ribs, her bare feet rooting to the earth as Daisy growled low, Max shifting uneasily behind her. She'd heard of Travis, Miles's iron fist, a man who crushed dissent with a nod, but seeing him here now turned her blood to ice. "Good morning, miss," he called, voice deep and edged, dismounting with a thud that shook the ground. "We're looking for a horse. Black, fine breed. Seen it?" Her throat tightened, Miles's name a specter in her mind. Rumors of his ruthlessness, his discarded horses vanishing into whispers. "Maybe," she said, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Found one near the creek, injured. Been taking care of him." Travis's gaze sharpened, peeling her apart like a blade. "That's Miles Grayson's horse. Blaze. Went missing after an accident. Where is he?" The air thickened, her father's lessons roaring back. "Stand for what's right, even when it hurts." She squared her shoulders, defiance flaring. "If he's Miles's, why was he abandoned? Left to die in the woods? Doesn't sound like someone who deserves him." Travis's brow furrowed, irritation flashing as her words struck. "That's not your business," he snapped, stepping closer, his shadow swallowing hers. He owns it. You don't. Hand him over. Her pulse raced, fear clashing with fury. She saw Miles in her mind. Gray suit, cold smirk. A man who tossed Blaze aside like trash. His trophies gleaming while this king bled out. No, she said, sharp, unyielding. I saved him. He's mine now. Travis's eyes darkened, a growl rumbling in his throat. Don't play games, girl. Miles gets what he wants. Always does. His hand twitched toward his coat, a threat unspoken, and the men behind him shifted, ready. The pace surged, a creak from the stable. Hooves on wood. Blaze emerged, slow, limping, his black form towering as he stepped into the light. Lila's breath caught. He moved, deliberate, pained, straight to her side. Stood tall, ears back, eyes burning, locked on Travis, a protector, not a ruin. The foreman froze, hand stalling midair, shock flickering in his steely gaze. Blaze, she whispered, hand brushing his neck, his strength a shield against the men's menace. Travis cursed low and harsh. You've got no idea what you're messing with. She faced him, voice rising. I know exactly what I'm doing. He's not yours to take. Blaze snorted, a sharp blast, his presence a wall between her and the threat. Miles's past crashed into her thoughts. Races won, crowds cheering, Blaze's hooves a thunderclap on the track. Miles's smug grin as gold piled high. She'd heard the tales in town, his pride, his fury when a horse faltered, his orders to clean house when they couldn't run. Now that fury stood before her, embodied in Travis's glare. But Blaze's loyalty, unexpected, fierce, shattered her fear. He chose me, she said, voice trembling but firm, her hand tight on his mane. Not you, not him. Travis's jaw clenched, the men behind him exchanging uneasy glances. He stepped back, voice dropping to a hiss. Miles'll hear about this. You're done, girl. He turned, mounting up, but his retreat felt hollow. A crack in the armor of Miles's will. The riders vanished over the hill, dust settling like a shroud, leaving Lila shaking, her hand still on Blaze's neck. His heat grounded her, his eyes steady, a silent vow binding them. She'd faced the storm's edge and held, but Travis's threat lingered. Miles was coming, and he wouldn't stop. Her father's words echoed, "The fight's never over when it's right." And as Blaze nudged her, a soft whinny breaking the silence, she knew this was war now, and something bigger loomed, ready to test the heart she'd staked on this broken king. The day crawled on, gray clouds thickening overhead, a restless sky mirroring the unease coiling in her chest. She tended Blaze in the stable, her hands moving over his swollen leg with practiced care. Warm water, herbs, a blanket to ease his shivers, each act a quiet vow to keep him safe. His strength grew, the limp softening, but his past loomed larger now. A king's legacy she couldn't ignore since Travis's cold claim, Miles Grayson's horse. She saw Miles in her mind, gray suit sharp as a blade, eyes like frost. A man who'd built an empire on gold and greed, his trophies gleaming while Blaze bled out in the dirt. Town whispers painted him cruel, horses vanishing, workers broken, and now that cruelty was her enemy, a shadow creeping closer with every passing hour. Conflict gnawed at her. She was one girl, her ranch a patched-up dream, against a millionaire's wrath. Could she win? Her father's colt flashed again, his frail triumph, her young hands helping, and she clung to it, a lifeline in the dark. Hooves thundered again, louder, heavier, a storm breaking over the horizon. Lila stepped outside, heart slamming, as riders crested the hill. Not 3, but 6, Miles Grayson at their head, his wide-brimmed hat cutting a silhouette against the bruised sky. He rode a chestnut stallion, its coat gleaming with wealth, Travis at his side, the others fanning out like wolves circling prey. Daisy growled, hackles up, Max shifting nervously as Lila's breath caught. Miles in the flesh, his presence a cold weight that crushed the air from her lungs. He dismounted, boots hitting the ground with a thud that echoed in her bones, his gray suit pristine despite the dust, his piercing gaze locking onto her like a predator sizing up its kill. "So you're the girl," he said, voice low, menacing, a smirk curling his lips. "Think you can steal from me, Lila?" Her knees shook, but she stood tall, Blaze's trust afire in her chest. "I didn't steal anything," she shot back, voice steady despite the fear clawing her throat. "I saved him. You threw him away, left him to die. He's mine now." Miles's smirk faltered, his eyes narrowing, a flicker of rage beneath his icy calm. She saw his past. Races won, Blaze's hooves a thunderclap, his pride swelling with every trophy, only to shatter when that leg buckled, his snarl at the vet. Useless. That memory fueled her father's lessons surging. Stand for what's right. And she faced him, unyielding. "You don't deserve him," she said, sharp, defiant. "He's more than your money." Miles stepped closer, his shadow swallowing hers, voice dropping to a dangerous hiss. "You're playing with fire, girl. I get what I want, always have. That horse is mine, and you'll hand him over, or I'll take him." His men edged forward, hands twitching. Travis's cold stare, a silent promise of force. New conflict erupted in her. Fear of his power, her ranch's fragility, against the fierce need to protect Blaze, her family now. Then, a creak. Blaze emerged from the stable, limping but proud, his black form towering as he moved to her side, ears back, eyes blazing at Miles. Her breath hitched, his loyalty a shield. But Miles laughed, cold and cruel. "Look at him, broken. You think that changes anything?" Footsteps crunched behind her. Ethan, her friend, stepping from the house, his lean frame tense but resolute. "She's not alone, Grayson," he said, voice firm, eyes hard. "You can't just take what you want here." Miles's gaze flicked to him, disdain curling his lips, but more came. Neighbors, farmers, shadows peeling from the trees, their faces etched with quiet fury. Nora, the milk buyer, stood with them, her nephew beside her, a crowd swelling against Miles's might. Lila's heart leaped. Her call last night, her plea to Ethan, had spread, a fragile alliance born of shared defiance. "We stand with her," Nora said, voice cutting through the wind. "You don't own us." Miles's smirk vanished, rage flashing as he faced this unexpected wall. His past roared in his mind, a race lost years ago, a rival's taunt, the sting of power slipping, a wound he'd buried under wealth. Now it bled anew, his control fraying before these dirt-streaked faces. "You think you can stop me?" he snarled, voice rising, his men tightening their grip on reins. "I've crushed bigger than you." The tension snapped. Travis drew papers, thrusting them at Lila. "Sign, he's yours. No trouble." A trick she knew, Miles's smirk too sharp, but she pushed them back, voice fierce. "No deals. He stays." Miles's eyes darkened, a signal flashing to his men. They moved, boots crunching, hands reaching. Blaze snorted, rearing despite his limp, a king's fury unleashed, and the crowd surged, voices rising, fists clenching. Lila stood at the center, Ethan at her side, her father's pride aflame in her chest. "You're stronger than you know." Miles faltered, outnumbered, his power trembling against this raw, unshakable will. "This isn't over," he spat, mounting up, his retreat a storm of dust and fury. But his threat lingered, a promise of war. Lila's breath shook, Blaze's head nudging her, and she knew. The fight had grown, and something greater, justice, unity, waited to claim its ground. Dust churned in the wake of Miles Grayson's retreat, a gritty shroud swallowing his riders as they vanished over the hill, their hoofbeats a fading growl against the bruised sky. Lila stood rooted, her bare feet sinking into the earth, her hand trembling on Blaze's mane as his black frame loomed beside her, a steadfast king despite his limp. The crowd, Ethan, Nora, the farmers, held their ground behind her, breaths heaving, fists unclenching, their faces a mix of exhaustion and fire. Miles's snarl, "This isn't over," echoed in her ears, a venomous promise that coiled around her heart, tightening with every gust of wind that swept the ranch. She'd won this battle, her alliance a wall he couldn't breach, but the victory felt fragile, A thin thread stretched over a chasm of doubt. Blaze nudged her, his muzzle warm against her arm, and she whispered, "We did it, boy," her voice cracking, pride and fear warring within her. The sun sank low, casting long shadows over the valley as the crowd dispersed, their voices soft with awe and resolve. "You showed him, Lila," Nora said, her nephew nodding. "He won't forget this," Ethan added, his steady gaze a lifeline. She watched them go, her ranch settling into an uneasy quiet, the stable's weathered walls a sanctuary now scarred by the day's fight. Blaze stood in his corner, hay rustling under his hooves, his deep eyes catching the fading light. A king reclaiming his throne, yet marked by a past she couldn't fully grasp. She tended him, hands moving over his leg with care born of weeks, her father's words a steady hum. "Strength isn't free, but it's worth it." She saw him in her mind, his weathered smile, his colt's triumph, and felt his pride, a torch passed to her in this moment of defiance. But Miles's shadow lingered, a cold weight pressing on her chest, his wealth a storm she couldn't outrun. Night fell, stars piercing the dark like scattered embers, and Lila sat beside Blaze, her back against the stable wall, her denim dress damp with sweat and dust. "You're more than he ever saw," she murmured, stroking his mane, her voice a lifeline in the stillness. His ears flicked, a soft nicker answering her, and she traced his scars, battle marks from a life of glory, now hers to guard. Her mind churned. Miles's rage, his empire of gold and greed, the races where Blaze had soared, his fall a crack in that perfect facade. She'd heard the tales, his fury when a horse failed, his cold orders to clean house, his smirk as he tossed Blaze aside. Now that smirk was her enemy, and the fight had grown beyond her ranch, a war of heart against power. Ethan's voice broke her thoughts, stepping from the shadows. "He'll come back, Lila. Men like him don't lose easy." She nodded, jaw tight. "I know, but we'll be ready." Days bled into weeks, the ranch a hive of quiet strength as the community rallied. Farmers mending fences, Nora's nephew bringing herbs, Ethan strategizing by lantern light. Blaze healed, his limp fading, his steps a slow thunderclap across the paddock, a king reborn under Lila's care. But unease gnawed at her. Miles's silence was too loud, a predator circling unseen. Then it came. Hoofbeats, sharp and sudden, shattering the dawn. She bolted outside, heart slamming, Ethan at her side as riders crested the hill. Miles again, alone this time, his chestnut stallion gleaming, his gray suit ablaze against the pale sky. He dismounted, boots crunching gravel, his piercing gaze locking onto her. No smirk now, just raw, simmering rage. "You've had your fun," he said, voice low, lethal. "Give me the horse, or I burn this place down." The pace surged. Blaze burst from the stable, limped fast, stood tall, ears back, eyes blazing. Miles flinched, brief, sharp, a crack in his icy mask. Lila stepped forward, voice rising. "You don't scare me!" Ethan flanked her, fists clenched. "Leave, Grayson!" The air crackled, Miles's hand twitching toward his coat. Papers? A weapon? But the crowd surged from the trees, farmers, neighbors, a wall of defiance, their shouts a roar. "Get out! He's ours!" Miles froze, outnumbered, his empire trembling before this raw, unshakable will. His jaw clenched, rage boiling, but he saw it, the unity, the fire he couldn't buy. "You'll regret this," he spat, mounting up, his retreat a storm of dust, his threat a whisper in the wind. The ranch stilled, the crowd's cheers fading into a heavy quiet as sunlight spilled gold over the valley. Lila stood with Blaze, her hand on his neck, his strength a steady pulse under her fingers. Ethan grinned, weary but fierce. "We beat him, Lila." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on the horizon, Miles's shadow a ghost she couldn't shake. "For now," she said, voice soft, her father's pride aflame in her chest. "You're stronger than you know." Years passed, the ranch blooming into a sanctuary, horses, dogs, strays finding refuge under her care. Blaze its heart, his noble gaze a beacon of their triumph. The community thrived, unity forged in that standoff, Miles's name fading into a bitter memory, his power broken by their will. But one dusk, as Lila walked the paddock, Blaze beside her, the wind rose, rustling the grass with a whisper she couldn't parse. He stopped, ears flicking, his deep eyes locking on the horizon. Distant, searching, a flicker of something old, something lost. Her breath caught. Was it Miles lurking still? Or Blaze's past, a life of glory calling through the years? She felt it, a warmth, faint, fleeting, like her father's hand, a presence watching over. "You're free now," she whispered, stroking his mane. Lila and Blaze's journey ends under the dusk at her little ranch, where a humble girl turned abandonment's pain into a blaze of compassion, and a discarded horse became a symbol of resilience. From the shadow of Miles Grayson's cruelty, they forge a sanctuary with their community, proving love and unity can outshine any wealth or power. Yet as Blaze gazes at the horizon, those deep eyes leave us wondering, is this tale truly over? Or does a darkness still linger out there, waiting? If this story of courage and heart moved you, hit that like button to honor them, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel today. Turn on notifications so you don't miss more inspiring tales like this, where every moment proves the strength of the human spirit. Thanks for joining us on this incredible ride.